Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Nick from ForexForNoobs.com with the daily analysis. Today is Tuesday, the 28th of January 2020, and the time is 2 p.m. here in the UK. You're looking at a AUDUSD daily chart. So let's actually switch over to. Well, let's stick with AUDUSD. We'll talk about USD ZAR shortly. I'm going to stick with AUDUSD because we have a pretty decent setup forming here, but also I want to discuss last week's setup. And yeah, let's just dive right into it, guys. In today's analysis, we're obviously going to be looking for price action setups like we do in every analysis session. So first of all, last week I was talking about this head and shoulders pattern forming here on AUDUSD, looking for an entry once it broke below here. Anyone get in on this one? I know it's a bit weird because head and shoulders patterns are new to the way we trade. They've only been added this year. After looking at head and shoulders and how they perform last year, when I was looking over my results, I decided to add them to the strategy because they can be quite powerful if traded in the right way. So I wouldn't be surprised if no one entered this because they're quite a new thing and there's not even a video on them yet in the course. But has anyone entered? Anyone who's in the room right now? Or am I right in assuming nobody entered this one? Alright, it looks like no one entered it. So this ended up... Oh, you got in on the Euro USD one. That's quite nice. This one ended up working out pretty well. Oops. Depending on when you entered, you could have entered on... Generally speaking, what I like to do with head and shoulders is when I get a good close beyond the neckline, which is essentially in this case the support resistance area here. So a good close beyond it is where I like the entry to be, and I want the stop loss above the neckline. So ended up being a pretty decent trade, although it would have been nice if the entry was a bit earlier, but because of the wicks from the previous Wednesday and Thursday candles, the entry had to be a bit lower. Even though it pulled up, even though after breaking these lows it pulled up, ultimately the entry would have been lower. So this one would have been entered on Monday. So yeah, it worked out quite well, but it's a bit of a tricky one because of the Friday/Monday, the weekend. Essentially, it makes it a bit hard to trade. When did you enter the Euro USD one, Tammy? Because that was a very similar situation with Friday/Monday. If you're waiting for the close, then you would have had to enter. If you entered on the Friday, you wouldn't have got the best entry because I just want to yeah, the Friday was already down here. So if you entered on Monday/Friday, you would have got on in and around this spot. So did you enter at close on Friday? Open on Friday. All right, cool. That's better. That's better than I thought. I thought you might have entered on the close on Friday because I don't remember anyone saying they entered. So were you in the webinar on Thursday then? Oh no, because the webinar on Thursday was... never mind. I'm just confusing myself right now. No, that makes sense. All right, so yeah, good entry. Would have been a bit tricky regardless, just on stop loss placement, but yeah, I guess that's a good entry. All right, anyway. So those two head and shoulders patterns worked out pretty well, although there was some trickiness because of the weekend. It was hard to enter it. It would have been hard for most. So first of all, these are new. So that's just one thing already that makes them hard to trade because I haven't done a video on them. Then on top of them being new, you've also got the fact that it was on a Friday, at least AUDUSD was. So I could totally understand why most people didn't enter these. They were really, really tricky ones. But ended up working out quite well. Head and shoulders patterns are pretty good. There's going to be videos added to them in the course pretty soon. But let's forget about last week's setups and talk about what's happening right now on AUDUSD because it's really quite interesting. So after this break from the head and shoulders pattern, it's hit this support area. And what's it doing right here? It's stalling out heavily on the support area. This is a pretty decent support area. It had a bounce back in November, the end of November. It came down and bounced away from it. And it's had some bounces in the past, although this area was kind of unclear on the bounces. It's had a pretty big wick bounce in Jan 2019. And yeah, before that is too far back. So it is stalling out on our support area right now, which is a pretty good sign. There is a potential long trade here that I'm looking for. It could keep going down from here, of course, but I do think there's also good potential for a long trade if it stalls out here on the daily. So what I'm waiting for is today's candle to close, and then I'll be looking for a potential long here tomorrow. EURUSD, very similar scenario, although this one isn't really stopping yet. It's only just approaching its support area. So this one will likely end up, if it becomes a trade, it would likely be towards, I would say Thursday. Unless you're entering on the 12-hour, which might give you a trade sooner. Or, you know what, it might also just never give you a trade because this could just break straight through the support area. Just because it's hitting a support area, it doesn't necessarily mean it will stop. It just means that's a place where it's more likely to stop. So I'm keeping an eye on the support area for a potential indecision candle and for it to stall out here. GBPUSD, we're looking for a short trade here last week. I'm not sure if anyone entered this one. It would have been a tricky one also because it did spike up depending on how large your stop loss was. Actually, I do think some people entered this one because it was posted to the forum. So depending on how large your stop loss was, you might have been stopped out from that big push up. Or if your stop loss was a little bit wider, you'd still be in this one and it's moving quite well. GBP New Zealand, this is another setup that I shared last week. Now this one, again, it just depends on the size of your stop loss. If you had a wider stop loss, you might still be in it. But I imagine most people probably would have closed out on Monday when it came flying back up. But I don't know. I don't know. Is anyone still in this or in GBP USD? It just depends how wide your stop loss was. Yeah. Could have done if it was that. It's tricky having a wide enough stop loss for this. Yeah, it would have been hard to come out of this one unscathed, to be completely honest. GBP SEC, nothing really going on here anymore. Let's remove this one from the list. Euro JPY, we were looking for a short here last week. Obviously, it went short. Just depends. Again, this one would have depended on your stop loss. USD ZAR. Yeah, this one came flying up on Monday. I imagine this one was closed out. If anyone was even in it, closed out at break even. I had a demo trade on this one, which was closed out at break even. Saw a lot of strength on Monday from the US dollar. You can see it across the board. Right. Let's take a quick look at the news. Consumer confidence. So today, all we have is a CB consumer confidence, which is coming out in about 50 minutes. I'm not too worried about that. Tomorrow, before the next webinar, this is going to be before the next webinar, the AUD news. CPI and trimmed mean, again, I'm not too worried about that. Then at 7 p.m. tomorrow evening, that's more interesting. We've got the FOMC statement and the funds rate, etc., the press conference, all that. Obviously, that's something you need to be concerned about. That can always have an impact on price. We'll look at the other news later in the week because it's not going to affect us in the next 24 to 48 hours. Just keep an eye on the FOMC stuff, but that's tomorrow evening, so it's a fair way away still. It's going to alphabetize these and we'll just look for some new setups. So we got potential setups on AUDUSD and EURUSD, but let's look if we can spot anything else. Right off the bat, we see something interesting on AUDCAD. I'm going to mark this as a potential. We have price stalling out on top of the support area. It's looking quite good on the 12-hour. It's looking decent on the daily. The 12-hour will give us a trade much sooner, so it just depends what approach you want to take. 12-hour, generally speaking, is slightly riskier than the daily, but you can also get great trades on the 12-hour. So there's no reason not to trade the 12-hour. It's just if you want the safer trade, you're best off waiting for the daily. On the 12-hour, there's potential for a nice setup if you have a pretty tight stop loss. But if you target the next resistance area, you have a 2.5R risk to reward ratio, so you can really widen out that stop. Which will give you a little bit more room to breathe on this trade. That would be on the 12-hour, which is kind of an important thing to do on the 12-hour, giving your trades a little bit of room to breathe. So there's definitely potential here for a long trade on the 12-hour. Want to see how this current 12-hour candle closes. It's going to close in about 6 hours. So it's still got some time to go. Sorry, it is actually 2 p.m. So it's going to close in about 8 hours. So it's still got some time to go. Let's just be patient, wait for this candle to close and see how we see if we're going to enter this as a potential long. AUDCHF, again, we have price stalling on support. This one doesn't look quite as good because it's a pretty big indecision candle. Yeah, I'm not crazy about this one, but it is a potential setup. So I am going to mark it as a potential one. It has a risk to reward ratio of 2, depending on how and when you enter. So let's imagine today's daily candle closes like this. Then we could potentially enter a long on tomorrow's candle. If you want to trade this on the 12-hour, you could also potentially still be already be in this trade. It would be slightly riskier, of course, like I was just saying, but you could be in this trade right now. Personally, I'm going to wait for the daily because I was already saying that I'm not crazy about this setup because of the risk to reward ratio. So entering on the 12-hour seems a bit risky to me. I'm going to wait for the daily, but there is a potential long here on AUDCHF. And it looks like this is going to be happening on most of the AUD pairs. There is a potential setup here on AUDJPY, but this one's risk to reward ratio just isn't going to be there for us. It's not going to give us a setup. The risk to reward ratio is in fact atrocious. Perhaps on the 12-hour you'd get something better, but no, not really. So I'm not going to do anything with AUDJPY. AUD New Zealand, this one is not quite at the support area yet. Does it make sense to adjust this area? It makes sense to adjust both these areas, to be completely honest. That's more in line with our recent bounces. So it actually is on a support area, but this one's a bit of an iffy support area. You can see that I just moved it. Doesn't have a lot of history, so it's not a great support area. Therefore, I would say this trade's a little bit riskier than your normal trade. That being said, it is still technically a valid setup. Although, like I said, this support area is not that great. If you were to enter on the 12-hour, you could be in this trade already, but from such a weak support area, I just don't really think that's worth the risk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch this one on the daily, see if we get indecision. It's already shooting up quite fast, so we might not even see indecision here, but you never know. So we got a lot happening on the AUD pairs. Let's again an AUD pair, but this is Euro AUD. Although this one's gonna not give us a good risk to reward ratio, or maybe it will, but yeah, I don't like this one. I'm not going to do anything here. Euro CHF stalling out on support. Not crazy about this one. Not at all. Euro GBP, nothing much going on here, guys. I just want to take another quick look at that, actually. Nah. Euro NOK, shooting back up, but no setup here. Euro New Zealand, nothing. GBP AUD. It's hit resistance and it's already turning around. Yeah, it's already turning around. It's a bit late. GBP New Zealand, there could technically be a setup here if this gives us some indecision here. It is clearly stalling at this resistance area. So this second attempt might work out better than the first attempt. So I'm going to keep a close eye on it, but I'm not sure what we'll do with that one, if we'll trade it at all. Yeah, I don't like that. Are there any questions, guys? There's nothing on these other pairs. So what we're looking at today is AUDUSD stalling out on support for a potential long. EURUSD is approaching support, not quite yet stalling out, but do look for it to stall out. AUDCAD stalling out on support for a potential long. AUDCHF again stalling out on support for a potential long. Same as AUD New Zealand, and GBP New Zealand stalling out on resistance for a potential short. I would say that most of these won't trigger, if at all, they won't trigger until perhaps Wednesday evening or perhaps even Thursday. So we need to be patient and just keep a close eye on these, but they are great potential setups for daily chart trading / 12-hour chart trading. So they're all worth keeping a very close eye on. Are there any questions? All right, guys, it doesn't look like there's any questions, so I am going to wrap this one up. I'm going to be doing another webinar. I'm not sure about the time for tomorrow's webinar. I think it's going to be around about 12. But we'll see how it goes. So yeah, thank you guys for attending, and I'll see you for tomorrow's analysis.